Hello everyone and welcome to BearNews as we take a look at the brand new title from FromSoftware, Elden Ring. The initial news of this title hails all the way back from 2019. However, the game went quiet for quite some time, and it isn't until now in 2021 that we've really started to get some solid leads upon it. And on top of that, we've also now got a release date. Elden Ring hails from the collaboration of Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin. Two fantasy powerhouses that once brought together have honestly made something truly special. Between the concept art released and the actual in-game trailer footage, this game is shaping up to be one of the most expansive and lore-heavy Soulsbourne titles to date, which if you've played any of the earlier games is definitely something to say. The game has been described by its creators as heavily based on Dark Souls, but with a more open and vast environment. And you don't just have to take their word for it. Taking a look at their trailers, we can see just how expansive this map has gotten, and this seamless open world environment is set to be playing a pretty heavy role in not just how players interact with the world, but also becoming a core part of the gameplay itself. The Soulsbourne series began all the way back with Demon's Souls in 2009, and then expanded upon in Dark Souls in 2011, and has expanded upon their base gameplay each and every time, with each title introducing different styles of play while still retaining the core gaming mechanics that so many players have grown to love. And looking back, it really does seem like FromSoft has used each and every one of its games to expand upon its base game style while introducing new mechanics and experimenting with features, seemingly culminating in the creation of Elden Ring. The more fluid and reactive combat of Bloodborne, stealth-based mechanics and more active game style introduced from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and of course, the artwork and grandeur of the original Dark Souls series. And all of this is no more apparent than when we're looking at the enemy types available in the game. FromSoft has essentially been able to cherry-pick all the best aspects of their previous titles. We see horrid infested swamps, set to contrast against the tree lighting up the world behind it. We see gravity-defying structures, their shattered remains seemingly held in place by magic, and behind it, the flying of dragons. The lamentations of the fallen inhabitants of this world gathered around a great fire in the center of a darkened wood. All of this title runs in contrast, and though this is a very simple thing, it really invokes a feeling in the player, with a very dichotomy of the Soulsbourne series coming to fruition in this title: darkness and light, death and rebirth. These simple themes have been prevalent through the entire franchise, now let loose upon the largest map that has been seen in a FromSoft game. And of course, with that increase in scale, we then begin to see enemies increasing too. Now, an over-the-top boss is nothing new to the Soulsbourne series, but when we look at the sheer scale of this moving building, the bell still present swinging beneath it, and the tattered remains of a stone bridge seemingly minuscule in comparison. Now, of course, with such an increase in scale, inevitably there's going to be more requirements for players to move some pretty large differences around the environment. Something that has kind of always been a theme within the Dark Souls series, with players traversing these extremely large maps, moving back and forth between them and opening up shortcuts as a reward for exploration and progression within the game. But here, we see the introduction of a mount, and mounted combat. The fact that they have had to include a mount really does reinforce this idea the map has grown so large that it will be necessary to traverse it quicker than they would be able to on foot, and thus requiring a mount in order to do so. But of course, being a FromSoft title, we can still see shortcuts introduced when actually riding our horse, with these littered platforms allowing us to seemingly scale sheer vertical cliff faces in a single bound. The magical components of this game, apparently including your steed, really does draw into question exactly what we'll be able to do with our mounts, especially considering we can seemingly call upon them at any point upon the main map. This is under the assumption that when you enter the dungeons, as the developers have foretold over on the Bandai Namco website, that this will not be of access to us in the confined depths of our adventuring. But drawing back to that combat, we see interestingly in the trailer footage the use of sword-mounted combat, with the player charging headlong against a foe with two mighty demons chained and dragging a cart behind them. Seeing as how the Soulsbourne series has always been quite focused upon allowing players to develop their characters in whichever way they like, and including weaponry within that character development and personalization and progression, I will be curious to see exactly how they allow for mounted combat expertise in this game. Will we begin to see lances, mounted crossbowmen, something that was incredibly effective in history, but perhaps a little overpowered in this game? Essentially, the boundaries have been removed from this title, allowing for some serious development in character customization and choice of play, even with this small inclusion of a mount. And this character customization and personalization of combat styles is further reinforced when we get to see some actual on-foot combat, not only by the player character, nor even only by their foes, but also from their summoned friends, engaging in some jolly good cooperation. The combat we see here appears to be far more fluid and more in keeping with that Bloodborne style, fast-paced, dexterous, and very reactive. All of this despite using some kind of two-handed scimitar as their weapon, charging headlong, jumping into combat before wheeling themselves out. On the note of that glorious cooperation, we can see the summoning of two characters simultaneously into your realm. Armed with whips and bows, they go against their foe. And something that I was actually extremely pleased to see is that close quarters bow action at play. As personally, I've always enjoyed trying to roleplay as a hunter, but found the old fighting systems a little bit more restrictive than preferred. And moving on to the boss fights, if we, and I know this is strange to say, completely ignore the bosses for a moment and focus on our character, we can see what appears to be a double jumping horse, meaning even more control over your mount as you fight, as well as some kind of shadow step, allowing the player to not only dodge this attack, but also move forward, closing the distance while breaking the line of engagement. And then, as if to dash all hopes gained, we see our death. Something that if you've never played any of the Soulsbournes before, you're just gonna have to accept is a natural part of the game. For as they said early on, they will fight and they will die. Demons, dragons, knights, and beasts most foul, all the best parts of the Bloodborne series brought here together in a single game. And now we come to something that I really wanted to talk about. Continuing on with the theme that Elden Ring is a culmination of all of the previous FromSoftware titles, then we can start to view these bosses in a slightly different way. And that is to say that many of them bear a striking similarity to the legends of old. Now, as to whether this is a link to any of the other Souls titles, I highly doubt, but it is definitely nice to see that some of the most iconic designs are seeing themselves updated, reimagined, and taking their place in the sun once more. And I think this scene so perfectly encapsulates this idea that FromSoft has truly learned from all of their previous titles. We have what is essentially Flaming Smaug, going up against what is essentially Arturius. And if we look closely against our Flaming Smaug, you can even see in the hammer what could well be the lion's mane. Now this is entirely conjecture, but I do so hope that's true. Now we see the Sekiro considerations, the stealth coming into the combat, where the player sneaks up to their enemy before taking them out one by one, only for it to descend into madness. Now Bandai have announced that stealth is going to be a serious consideration in this game, and although we've only seen a small hint of it in this trailer, I expect in time we're going to see more and more of the gameplay opening up and expanding upon this system. And given how well it worked in Sekiro, I can't see there being any issues coming into Elden Ring. And the same can be said for the magic. We have very limited information on exactly how the magic works in this game, but it really doesn't matter. By drawing upon all the previous titles, players know exactly what to expect and roughly how these things will work. Really, the only thing we need to consider is how they've improved it, how they've expanded upon it, how they've developed it further. And since they've been experimenting, practicing, developing with each title, they surely shall not disappoint. The increase in size of the world of course lends itself to a larger emphasis on world exploration, and the bigger scale to the environment has also included a bigger scale to the enemies, with larger bosses, larger hordes, and the deeper depths of the yet unseen dungeons. And something good to note is as you move across this larger world, they have stated that there will be time progression within the game and natural weather. As to exactly how weather will affect things beyond audio-visual cues is yet to be seen, but knowing FromSoft, it's undoubtedly going to be related to difficulty, with the likelihood of storms making it ever more harder to find your foes amongst the maelstrom, the cold sapping your endurance, and no doubt a whole lot more conjecture to come. But it's still nice to see that they've considered these things and are announcing them early enough that we can see their progress as time goes by, particularly given that there's a good 6-7 months until this game actually releases. The announcement on Elden Ring has included the release date of January 2022 across multiple platforms, from Xbox One, Series X and S, PC over on Steam, and PlayStation 4 and 5, with something to note here that Bandai has stated that a purchase on PS4 will include a free upgrade to PlayStation 5, should the day come that you can actually get the newer console. So with all that said, the game to watch out for its release in 2022. But until then, I'd love to hear what you guys think. How often do you reckon you'll die just getting past that opening section? Will we truly be able to praise the sun in cross-platform cooperation? And just how will the combined might of Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin create the story of this epic world? But until then, as always, peace out.